Hello. Coco, can you hear me now? I pressed mute because I was trying to do some other audio or connect my other audio. Okay, good. Yeah, I was trying to get my other audio connected with music, and then I was just like, I'm just not going to do that today because I'm going to have to maybe rewire my connection because the music part isn't working the way that it usually does when I do the wind down. But so these tag talks, I decided to do, and I'll usually do 3 episodes at a time, back to back. So today, tomorrow, and the next day. Well, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And so these will be recorded and I will have them on my Spotify podcast. And so when I'm done, I will put the link to the Spotify podcast. But the goal is to have that as well as the Spotify actual podcast. So this is giving me the audio for that. So I know it's during the workday, so people may be working and things like that. And so it's just a way for me to record the audio, even though some may not be able to tune in right at this moment. And so definitely going to just be talking through different topics. Every so often, if I can get a guest at the time that I'm doing the tag talks, then I will. This week, I'm doing them from 3 to 4 p.m., but I will be switching up the times based on my availability with work and things like that. And so I'll always try to put it out when I'm about to do it. So today I'm going to be talking about the music industry. I'll have 3 parts: part 1, part 2, part 3. I appreciate those who are tuning in. If you do tune in, even if you share out, even if you just let it play while you're working, any type of support, just saying a prayer, whatever it might be, I appreciate. But today's part 1, I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience with the music industry because I haven't really talked about it a lot on my channel. And some of you are just starting to kind of see that I've been involved with music, and I've been trying to share more of that via Instagram. So you might see me posting video clips of me singing, or if I'm out and about and I'm singing background for somebody, or I'm at a show or something like that. I'll try to post those clips and be more intentional about sharing my music journey. But I will say, I actually really got into music in, I'd say, around 2006, 2007. Now, mind you, I grew up singing with my sisters. We used to sing in church. We used to basically take gospel songs and recreate them and sing them a cappella because there were 3 of us. We always had the harmonies together and all of that stuff. Um, when I was younger, I used to actually write, but I didn't know it was writing. I would just make up songs. And me and my sister that passed away, Latasha, rest her soul, we would actually just make up songs and be singing and all this. But I never really realized it was songwriting until I got a little bit older. When she passed away, I remember reading like a Bible scripture because I was doing everything to try to encourage myself at that time, like trying to read, trying to cry or pray, whatever I could do to get myself encouraged during that time. I was doing it. And one of the things that I started doing was singing Bible scripture. So, like, I would be reading a scripture and then I just start making up a song out of it. And so, the next thing you know, I really kind of started thinking about, I can actually write. And so when I went to college, I was in a gospel choir on the campus. And not only that, I was involved in like a Christian sorority, and we would have these events, kind of positive, like open mic events and stuff like that. Not all the songs had to be like gospel music or things like that. It just had to be positive music that was encouraging. And so I started kind of sharing some of that with people, actually singing. There was one point where during Hurricane Katrina, all of that happened. I actually wrote a song called Rainbow, and I shared that song at that event in college. And that was the first time I actually shared a song that I had written myself, actually sang it out loud to let people know that I could write. So it kind of sparked an interest. Not only that, my brother-in-law, My oldest sister is about 9 years older than me. And so she actually um, was involved with a lot of music with her husband. My brother-in-law was a gospel singer. And so he actually had been in the process of recording an album. And that was the first time I actually got to go to a studio. So he had me, some of his family members, they all sing. We all went in the studio and we recorded some of the background vocals on his project. And that was my first time experiencing a music studio. And so it really sparked an interest in music as far as me actually recording my own music. So I was in college doing all of that. I here and there would write songs, here and there I would perform songs, here and there I would share some of my music, but I still kind of kept it to myself. I remember there was one trip. I don't know if I had moved to Vegas by this time or if I was visiting. I think I had already moved to Las Vegas after I graduated college. I started to share some of the songs that I wrote with my oldest sister. And she was like, you need to let your brother-in-law, you need to let Jonathan hear them. You need to let him hear them, because he actually was a writer himself, and actually played keyboard and produced music and stuff like that. So she was like, you need to let him hear it. You need to let him hear your music. And so I was really shy about it, but I was like, okay. So I went back into their bedroom, and it was just me in there with him. And I was like, Tanya said she wants me to share this song with you. And I sang a song that I had actually written. And I can't remember what the song was that I shared with him, but I sang the song that I had written. And he was like, you wrote that? I said, yeah. And he's like, that's good. He said, you're on to something. He was like, you need to keep that up. And so it kind of encouraged me to keep writing. So I started exploring, finding like producers online, and I came across like music producers and stuff like that, so I could start finding music to actually record to. But mind you, before that, I had written all of these songs that were just my vocals. Like I didn't have an instrument with it or anything like that. I had just written the lyrics and arranged all of the vocals, and I would just like record it on whatever device I had available at the time, via my computer. Now we have so much technology, it's much easier now. But that's kind of where it started. And so I would write songs. I started collaborating with him. We were working on a couple of songs together as well. And then I started writing more R&B, soul, because I grew up listening to a lot of gospel music, but I also listened to a lot of R&B and 90s R&B and all of that. And so it kind of sparked that interest. So probably around 2007, I actually looked up a music studio. I booked a session at a studio just on my own. I had some music that I had purchased from online, from a producer online. And mind you, I will say this, my brother-in-law taught me a lot about the business side of music. So he taught me how to copyright my music. He taught me about all of those pieces to make sure that I protected myself when it came to what I wrote. So I knew these things. So I'd gone through that process, and I booked that session and I recorded 2 songs in the studio. And those are the first 2 songs that I recorded on my own in the studio that I just went to on my own. After that, I decided to look for another studio, and I found another studio to record at. And that particular manager of the studio, he owned the studio. He actually heard me recording, and he asked the engineer who that was. Like, who is that in there? So, mind you, I'm in my 20s at this time. I'm like, I was probably about late 20s or so. So I'm in the studio recording. He hears me. He's asking the engineer about me. And then he asked to meet with me. And so he basically told me, I would love to work with you. I know that you've been coming to my studio to record with Mario, who was the engineer that I was recording with. Shout out to Mario Harper. I'll talk more about him eventually as well, because we're still connected. He still does music, produces music for me as well. But anyway, I actually ended up signing a management contract for Derry to be my manager. He was the owner of that studio. And so we came up with a deal. Now, mind you, he gave me a contract. And again, shout out to my brother-in-law, Jonathan, and I'll talk more about him. He passed away in 2014, but he taught me the business side of music. And I appreciate him so much because when I was offered that contract to have a manager, I didn't just sign it. And some people just sign it. And if I could say anything to anybody that has an interest in the music industry, hey, Sonia, thank you. If I could say anything to anybody that has an interest in the music industry, I would say get a lawyer that knows entertainment, and not a lawyer that is offered to you from a music label, but go find your own lawyer that you build a connection with and that you trust. So when I was offered an opportunity to get a manager to have him manage my music, he offered me the contract. I said, I would like to take this contract and look it over with an attorney. And the thing about it, I also wanted to see his reaction. So he reacted very well. He said, no problem. Sure. If you ask somebody, or if you say, I want to take this to my lawyer, and that person gets mad or tries to talk you out of it, run. So run as far as you can and as fast as you can. No one should ever get offended if you say, I want to take this contract, look over it, and let my manager or let my attorney look over it. Because that's you protecting yourself and giving yourself a chance to read it. If you know anything about contracts, if you've never seen a music contract, they can be fairly long and they have a lot of verbiage. And if you aren't familiar with some of those terms, you can sign something and not even know truly what you're signing. And then when something happens, you're like, what? I didn't know that. And they'll tell you it was in the contract. And it is, if you read all of it. And so I would just advise that to anybody. So shout out to my brother-in-law, Jonathan, for teaching me that. So I took the contract and I called a friend that I actually went to college with, who is an attorney. And at the time, he was talking about the fact that he was looking to become an entertainment lawyer. And I knew that he knew music because he himself in college used to play the piano and all of this stuff. And so, and actually now he actually is involved in entertainment law. And so he made that dream happen. But I hit him up, I contacted him and I said, I have a contract that someone's wanting me to sign to basically have management over my music. Can you look at it for me? And also, like, what is your price? So he told me his price. I sent him the contract. He looked over it and he said, I've put some notes on here. Take it back and get these things corrected. So I took it back and I said, these are the things that need to be corrected and all that. And Derry, he said, no problem. And he corrected the contract and he sent it back to me. I sent it back to the attorney and he sent it back and said, okay, it's good. Then I signed it. So that was kind of my first time actually stepping foot into what would be the music industry. Hey, Soon to Rise. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for those who are listening in and out. I appreciate it. So I ended up now with a manager. So this was a management deal. It wasn't a record label deal. It was a management deal. So he owned the studio space and all of that. So anything involved with the studio coming in to record, whatever it might be, I basically had now access to. I didn't have to pay for my studio time because I signed the contract. So basically, whatever connections or dealings that they were able to make, it was within the contract. Also, I did not pay a fee to that manager. In the contract, it actually stated this percentage is what your manager will get, what the engineer will get, And the engineer is the person that you sit with who's actually pressing the buttons as you are recording in the microphone. They're sitting in front of the computer, the sound equipment, all of that, and they're actually pressing the buttons. They're engineering the whole session. So all of that was in the contract. So they didn't make money unless I made money. I know here in Dallas, I've experienced, and I was telling a friend of mine, why are you paying a manager up front? You shouldn't be paying them anything up front until you're actually making money. If you're not making any money, why are you paying this person up front? It should be in a contract saying that you get this percentage off of what I make. And people get over on young artists trying to make them pay fees up front. Also, some people sign on to labels and they want to get those royalties up front. You have to pay all that back. You have to pay back everything, even down to a hairstylist or a clothing designer that's designing clothes for you if you're signed to a label. And mind you, like I said, I was not signed to a label. I was signed to a management deal. So basically, like any shows or anything that I got access to throughout whatever venue was through the manager. So when people would ask me to book something, I would say, this is my manager's information. That's who they would have to book through. So managers can be helpful, but only if it's done the right way. Yeah, got to be willing to walk away if the contract isn't in your favor, for sure. And some people are not, because they want fame so badly that they will sign their life away and not even really know it because they didn't really take the time to read every single word on the contract. Those contracts can be long, but it's worth the time to actually read it. And if anybody is rushing you to sign something, run. I keep saying it. Sonia, you got the little run emoji. Exactly, run. But these are just some things that I've experienced, and someone else may have a different story. I'll try to get people on when I can that can share their stories as well. But there's some crazy stuff that happens. So mind you, I'm recording, we're doing music videos. One of those music videos came out. The other ones, they partially were finished but never got released because it was just a lot of moving parts. The thing about having a manager is sometimes they also want to manage other people. And one of the things, I still every so often talk to Derry, who was my old manager at the time. And so I don't mind saying this, because even if he were to see this, it wouldn't bother me because I don't have any bad blood. I've never burned any bridges or anything like that. He still has my number. I still have his number. The thing about it was, managers want to make money. So he was also looking for that one artist that was going to maybe be what a record label was looking for. So one of the things that eventually he tried to get me involved in was a girl group. Now, mind you, I've never wanted to be a girl group. Keep this in mind as well. I never really even wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be a songwriter. When I first started, and I probably should have mentioned this part, before I actually recorded my own music, I used to write. I had my stuff up on the internet, on the web, where people could contact me to write for them. And there was a girl in Chicago, V, who actually became a really good friend of mine. But she reached out to me when I lived in Vegas. She lived in Chicago. She saw one of my postings. I can't remember what I posted it on. It could have been MySpace or whatever at the time. I think it was MySpace. But she reached out to me and asked me to write a song for her. She had the music, but she wasn't much of a writer. She could write somewhat, but she wanted some help. So she sent me the music and I wrote a song for her and she recorded it. It just so happened that her and her husband were thinking about moving to Vegas. When they came to Vegas, I met her and we started going to studios together and all of that. She probably was at the studio when I recorded the song that got me a management deal. So She probably was there with me, but so that's what I wanted to do. I used to call myself Songwriter T. And that's all I wanted to be, was a songwriter. I did not want to sing or any of that. But I kind of got talked into it with some of the songs that I had. They were like, you should record it. Like, you have a voice. Why don't you record your own music? You're gonna write that and give it to somebody else. And so I wish I would have just stuck with just songwriting, but that's a whole different story. Thank you, Coco T. I appreciate that. So anyway, guys, there's so many stories. I have to keep myself on track with what I'm telling in this part 1, because I still have a part 2 and a part 3 to get to tomorrow and Friday. So let me stay on track with where I was. So I got signed with the management deal. Over time, like I said, the manager, they want to make money, and I don't blame them, of course. So he actually had connections with Capitol Records. Capitol Records at the time was not looking for a solo singer, not a solo female singer. They were not looking for, at that time, a solo female singer. What they were looking for was a girl group, because at that time, girl groups were popular. So everybody's trying to find the next best girl group. So he asked me about it. He says, look, I've been talking to Capitol Records. They like your sound. They like this. They like that. But they would like you to consider a girl group. So Derry, and also this is where the pressure started as well, as far as the way you look. Derry also told me, make sure you keep yourself in shape. When I tell you, I was in the gym all the time, being really careful about what I ate. I didn't realize how small I had gotten until I look back at some of those pictures. And I wish I had some to pull up right now, but I had gotten pretty small and I didn't even realize it because I was just working out so much, this that. But I'm trying to maintain this look of what the industry was looking for, because that's what I was being told from the manager perspective. You have to keep the look, because if you don't, it's not even an option. And when people tell you that that's true, it is. So he tells me about Capitol Records. They're looking for a girl group. They're not looking for independent female artists or solo female artists. So I'm like, I don't really want to be in a girl group. I didn't really want to be in a girl group at all. But I was like, well, okay, I'm willing to meet with the girls or whatever it might be. No problem, Sonia. Yes, it'll be there. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you. So I decided to go ahead and be a part of this meeting, and he brought in these girls to kind of audition, all these different girls. And I don't know, it wasn't my thing. Like, I wasn't trying to do all the dance moves and all of this. Like, mind you, I like to dance, but I like to dance for fun. I like to dance when I'm going to hang out and I hear my favorite music and I want to get up and just dance. When I sing and perform, I'm not a Sierra. So, like, that was kind of the way that they were going. Like, you have to have this look, you have to keep yourself fit, and then not only that, it needs to be singing and routines. So I think we only had like 2 or so meetings, and I was just like, I can't do this. It's not what I want to do. And not only that, he had also brought in another artist that he was managing. And he was kind of the look of what was kind of, people were trying to also find the next Justin Bieber and those kinds of things, or the next Eminem, because it was kind of catchy or whatever it might be. So there was this young white guy. He was a rapper. And so the producer that I was working with was also working with him to try to get him a hit song, because he kind of had the look that they were looking for. So he's trying to work with me, put me in a girl group, has this young guy that he's trying to put out and all of this. And so I was just like, you know what? I love to write. I love to sing, but I love to write. Like if I put out any music, it'll be music that I want to put out because I don't really care if it's popular. And the thing about being signed to a record label is you have to consider popular music because that's what sells. So it's not about what you want to write or what you like, it's about what other people want to hear. And it needs to be what's popular, what's trending, and all of that, the sound that they're looking for. And so, knowing that, I was like, you know what? I don't really like the direction this is going. Um, there had been nothing but respect uh, for Derry. Never had any arguments or anything like that. At the time, Mario and his wife, they had already left and moved to Atlanta. And so they weren't even there anymore because they were in Atlanta. So we had different engineers that we were working with, and I didn't have that same bond that I had with Mario and his wife. And still to this day, if I'm looking for music, he's one of my first people that I call. And he was the very first person I ever recorded my first song that I actually released with. So it's been a long time. And anytime that I'm doing music, I'm always going to mention their names. So I ended up asking Derry to leave my contract. Um, and this will be kind of the last thing that I share, the last part. So before I asked to get out of that management contract, now there were a bunch of other things that I did. I did some different events and stuff like that. There were different things that I've done in that. I was a part of, or about to be a part of, a stage play. We were rehearsing for that, all these different things. So before I actually asked to be released from the management contract, I had started going to these jam sessions, and the woman and her husband that were over them, um, they would have these basically they would invite singers, musicians to their condo, and the musicians would plug in and play, and any singer that wanted to get up there and sing, like it would just be like a jam session, kind of like a networking session. And you could only come if you were invited, because again, this was at their actual home, so they weren't trying to invite everybody. So usually a friend of a friend who they trusted could invite somebody, and that's kind of what happened. My friend V, she had met someone who was at that event. I can't remember exactly how that all took place, but that's kind of how I ended up going to those jam sessions. And when I would go, there was a man named Charlton, and shout out to Charlton as well. But he knew a lot about the music industry from like back in the old days. He's an older person. And so we would talk about just about the music business, and he told me about like a book to purchase and things like that. So we would just talk about the business side of music, and he would always tell me like, make sure you have your ducks in a row, make sure you know the music business, make sure you read, don't just take someone's word for it, make sure you have an attorney, make sure you do those different things. So I'm appreciative of that. But after I was talking to him for a while, I was like, you know what? I would love for you to work with me in a manager sense, because your advice has been very helpful. And not only that, you haven't really been seeking anything from me. You've just been giving me a lot of good, valuable information. And not only that, telling me to go read about it. You weren't just telling me these things, you were telling me to go read and find out for myself. And so I really appreciated that as well. And so we ended up kind of agreeing that he would be my manager. But I said, I have to do this the right way. I said, before I ask you to formally be my manager, I need to end this contract that I have with Derry at their studio. And so I went, set up a meeting and talked to Derry, and he actually was okay with it. He told me, I'll fill out the paperwork, I'll set up the paperwork, you can read through it, and we will end this contract. I said, one of the things I want for sure is my music. So when you're under management or you have somebody else who you're recording under, they have your music. They have, like, when people, you hear about these major artists and how they have to buy back their masters, and some of them have to pay millions of dollars to buy their masters. That's a real thing. Now, millions of dollars would be because at this point they're known artists. So whether it be Prince or somebody like that, they're known artists. So when you're talking about somebody controlling your masters, it's a big deal. That means that basically your whole session where you recorded, you go in the studio, you're in the mic and you're recording your whole session. So I might be recording the alto, the soprano parts, all those harmonies in the background. All of that gets saved as a session. So when you think about that, that's that file is considered your master file. And the people that you record under, they keep that. They don't give it to you. So not unless you record in your own studio and you're able to just do what you want. So it's a real deal when people say they may have to buy their masters back. The smart artists who don't sign those kind of contracts, those are the ones who don't have to worry about that. But yeah, so he gave me my masters. He gave me my full sessions. I didn't have to pay a fee to get them. He gave them to me. Now, I did experience some shady people who tried to like hold on to music and stuff like that, but that'll have to be in another story because trying to stay on track with what I was talking about here. So I ended up meeting and I ended that management deal and ended up going with Charlton. And so basically, his role was to try to connect me with opportunities, try to connect me to shows and stuff like that, try to help me get my music finished. And at that point, I was paying for all of my studio time because he was just going to be my manager. He wasn't a management company. And that's a big difference because the management company contract that I signed was almost like signing to like an independent record label. So they took care of everything. I didn't have to pay to record. I would just go in their studio and record. When you have a solo manager, they don't have a studio that they own. So you have to pay for your studio sessions. They're not paying for that. The only time the manager makes money is when you get shows and you get paid, then they get paid. Or if you sell music and you make money and then they make a percentage of money. So when I left that management deal, I gave up free studio sessions and all of that. I had to pay for that stuff. And studio time is expensive. Not only that, you have to pay for those sessions to get mastered, to get the right sound quality so that you can get them played on iTunes or Spotify or whatever it might be. So there's a lot of layers to it. So it was a good thing for me to be under a management company because, like I said, the one that I was signed to was almost like being signed to like an independent label, and they took care of everything, videos, things like that. I didn't have to worry about. So that was kind of what I went through. I had an opportunity to be signed. I would have had to be in a girl group, look a certain way, dance a certain way, but I said no and I walked away. And some people would say, well, why didn't you just sign? And then when you get signed, you can leave and do what you want. It's not that easy. There's so many people that go and sign to a major label and they end up stuck because sometimes they give away their name. So they can't go record anywhere else once they decide to leave because they've given up their name and they're not paying attention to the fine print of those contracts. And that's why you get people who go off and change their artist name to something else because that's the only way that they can record new music. Because if they try to record under their old name, they could get sued by their old record label. And those are things that people don't think about. There's so much that you have to be careful with. those of us who actually do music, you'll often hear people talk about how people sell their soul to the industry. And you don't really know what that means until you've been in it. And all I can do is share stories that I have and things like that. And this was just one piece of it, was that, because I would have loved to be signed to a major label. That was kind of like a goal once you became a singer and you decided you were going to be a singer or a rapper or whatever it might be. You want to be signed by a major label. It's a part of it. But I don't have that desire after that experience. After that experience, I did not have that desire to be signed by a label, because I realized there's a lot you get. You might get fame. People may know who you are, but you may not still like have a lot. You may not even have that much financially. You might look like you do. And there's some people that you guys see on TV and they look rich, but they're not. There's some that are, because they've done things the right way, or they've had attorneys who've made sure that they made the right decisions, or they're independent. And that's kind of the way that I would address things right now. If I would tell anybody that wants to be a singer or a rapper and they want to get in this industry, I would tell you to learn the industry. If you need to take a course on the music business, buy books about the music business, watch videos about people telling you about their experiences with the music business, do your research. And if you still want to sign to a label, again, take the contract to an attorney. But I would say the best way to go at this point in time is to be an independent artist. Learn the business yourself, get connected to social media, get music on TikTok, get your music on iTunes, on Spotify, set up your website, get active on social media. You can make it just on your own. And there's a lot of singers and rappers who at this present time are making it on their own. They're not signed to a major label. And when you do it that way, you get to keep the money and just pay your musicians, pay your studio fees or whatever it might be. But to me, that's the way to go. You don't have to go try to get signed by a major label, because a lot of people getting signed by some of these major labels, they have people who are just taking their money and controlling their lives. And I've seen it. And so that's kind of my story about the music industry, my part one story. So yeah, people ask me like, Talia, why don't you do music more, this or that? I had, after that experience and people just trying to change who you are, make you like stay a certain size. Like, you could kill yourself trying to stay slim. You could kill yourself trying to be somebody that you're not. And I just was not willing to do that. So shout out to my parents as well, because I feel like some of the things that I learned just growing up about having your own mind, not letting people talk you into things, don't let people change you into someone who you're not. Those teachings, you hear them when you're a teenager, and sometimes you're like rolling your eyes, like, I don't want to have these conversations, like, stop talking to me or whatever it might be. But a lot of those things hold true when you get older. You start to see like people will try to change you. And in the music industry, they surely will try to change you if you're not careful and if you don't get signed to the right people, if that's what you want. But you don't have to get signed. You can be independent and still be successful if you want. So I just wanted to share that. There's a reason why I kind of chose to back away and just not get into all of that. Fame is not everything that it's cracked up to be. I always tell people now at my age, because I am older, I surely don't want to be signed to a music label. Like at this point, like I love singing background, so I'll help people out that way locally. Like if they need background singers, like I love doing that. If someone wants me to write a song for them, I'm willing to do that. But other than that, when I do make my own music, it's really just a creative release for me. And if people want to hear it, people want to buy it, they will. But I'm not chasing the music industry because it's just too much for me. But to each his own. And I wish everyone the best. those of you that do want to get involved in the music industry, like if you have questions about what book to read, different things like that, if you want to know what a copyright is, if you want to know how to set up your music on iTunes or Spotify, if you want to know about sync licensing or those different things, feel free to reach out to me. My email is tag me LLC. It's TAGMELLC at Gmail. I'll put it in the chat. So if you have somebody that has some questions, they want to talk to me personally just about the business side of music, feel free to reach out because I have learned a lot. And for me, now it's about if I can help young people who actually do want to pursue that life, like I'm willing to help however possible. And even like my friends here in the Dallas area, like some of the young ones who really just still want to be a part of the industry and all that, like I don't mind sharing what I do know. I don't know everything, but I've learned a lot from just my experience. And like I said, this all started in around 2007 for me. So, and yeah, that's it. That's all. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to this tag talk on the music industry. I thought about sitting down and scripting out like what I wanted to say, but I decided to kind of just focus on today. I knew I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about my story. I haven't told you guys everything because it would just take too long for me to get into all the stories of just those years of pursuing music. So any questions you have, I could always answer them directly if there's something that I did not say that you were wondering about or any of that. But yeah, music is always going to be a big part of my life. I don't think the whole music industry is trash. I think people just have to read and then also don't be so anxious to be famous because that's what gets a lot of people on the wrong track because their focus is so much on just being seen, being seen, being seen. They're not really looking at the business part of it because people are making money moves. And if you aren't careful, those people will be making money and you'll be left with nothing. And I always told people, I'm not willing to be a starving artist. Never have been. And I know some people who are still struggling artists and they might be over 50 years old, but it's the life that they chose and they might be happy that way. But for me, I was like, I like to be comfortable. I like to have my own stuff. I like to have a car. I like to have a place to live. I like to have money to go travel. I like to be able to live a life. And so some people chose otherwise, and I just wasn't willing to do it. So there's just so much. And if I can help anybody, please let me know and I will. Also, I'm going to put my website in the chat. It's tagforshort.com. So I do have an actual website as well. Anytime that I update it, it will just be updated as I go along. So you can check out that website. Right now, my creative focus is music, YouTube, and also the work that I do with friends here in Dallas, some of the things that we're working on as well. So I may not share everything, but I'll share what I can to help other people. All right. So that's my pretty much hour. I appreciate all of you so much for tuning in. I will be back tomorrow for Tag Talk, the music industry part 2. Same time, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. And then I'll be back on Friday for the music industry part 3. And so tomorrow I'm going to talk more about why I would recommend being an independent artist. I'll also tell you guys about some of the things you can do if you want to be an independent artist, like how to set up your music on Apple Music or Spotify. I'll talk about that. If you're wanting to know how to copyright your music so you truly own your lyrics and can sue if somebody else uses them, I will show you how to do that. I'll talk about the poor man's copyright and why I think that's not enough. And so, yeah, so tune in tomorrow. And then on Friday, I'm going to talk about some of the celebrities that have been successful with the music industry and some of the celebrities who have not, and just my thoughts on it. and maybe some things that could have been done differently that would have avoided those downfalls. So, yeah, I hope you guys find this to be interesting, but I really want to talk about things on my channel that I have insight on and that interest me as well. And so if it interests you, that's even better. But I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a good, restful evening. Stay safe, and I will see you in the next one. As always, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you'll know when I post. And until next time, thank you, Coco TTV, for putting things in the chat. Shout out to those who were able to jump in the chat. I'll see you next time. Bye.